Hi guys, so I'm going to tell you a very quick true story before we get into the review. So this film came out in 92, and I reckon this particular thing that happened was in about 94, a couple of years further on. So I was in high school. I was just getting to the sort of age where you're interested in girls, but you're quite nervous around them. And this one day, it was the very first lesson. A bunch of us were sat around this table. We do things slightly differently in the UK to the US. In the US, I've noticed in every film I ever see, classrooms always have like just individual desks in neat rows. But in Britain, it's more common to have lots of kids crowded around much larger tables. So I came into school and I was sat around this big, large table. There was some girls, some lads, and this one particular girl always seemed to end up on her table first thing in the morning. I had a pretty big crush on her. And this one morning, she was talking about the Lawnmower Man. It must have been on TV the night before. It was probably like the ITV premiere of the time, which is crazy looking back on it. But yeah, she was chatting to this girl about the film in quite an enthusiastic tone, you know. And I was sat there thinking, why didn't I watch The Lawnmower Man last night? I was really cross with myself because it would have been the perfect opportunity for me to just muscle in on the conversation, get something going, you know, but it was just one of those opportunities that passed me by. But I have finally seen The Lawnmower Man. It took me another 30 years to finally see it. So if I ever bump into that girl now, and I haven't seen her since she was a teenager, so I probably wouldn't even recognise her, but if I did bump into her, I could finally now have a conversation with her about the highs and lows of the Lawnmower Man. Mostly lows, though, sadly. So, a couple of quick disclaimers before we get into it. Firstly, you'll find all my other reviews of Stephen King adaptations in my Stephen King playlist. My long-term goal is to cover all of them, even if it kills me. And the other thing to say is that there will be spoilers today. In fact, I consider it to be my public duty to spoil this movie as much as possible for you. So I'm going to be giving away all the secrets of the film at every opportunity, and it is absolutely deliberate on my part. So The Lawnmower Man began its life as a short story in Stephen King's Night Shift collection. It is absolutely the worst story on that collection, in my opinion. Now, to add more context to this, there are 20 stories in Night Shift. This would rank 20th out of 20th for me, and it's not even close. It's a very short tale, 15, 20 pages at most. The story is absolutely nonsensical to me. So, in the original, there's a middle-aged guy who hires somebody to come around and mow the lawn. But this guy is secretly like a devil's advocate or something. He's got some kind of supernatural power. So the homeowner catches this guy mowing the lawn, but he's not actually touching the lawnmower. He's making it go by itself somehow. And he's following the lawnmower, eating the grass behind it while it's mowing the lawn. It's just weird, this story. And the ending, there's some kind of chase where the lawnmower man's going round the house and the lawnmower's going up the walls and stuff. And then the story ends and it's like, what the hell was that, Stephen? It's just bizarre. And I've read this twice over the years. I still don't understand it. It's just a weird tale. It's the sort of story that you'd make up for a competition on the fly. So if you've ever been involved in creative writing circles, you may have come across these speed competitions that you can do where you're tasked to write a novel in the space of a month, or maybe a short story over the course of a weekend. What can you come up with it really, really quickly? And that's what The Lawnmower reads like something King came up with for a speed competition. You know, maybe he was there and he was like, oh, I've got to come up with something really quickly. And then he looked out the window, saw his wife doing the lawn and thought, oh, lawnmower, something to do with the devil. Yeah, oh, right, let's get into it. And he just got his head down and wrote the first piece of crap that he could come up with. And it really is that bad. And there's no way that they could have made a movie out of that. You'd struggle to even make a short story for a horror anthology out of the original story from Night Shift. So they've not even tried. What they've done for this movie is just take the title and that's it. They've come up with their own story entirely. And the only reason they wanted the title is just so that they could put Stephen King's The Lawnmower Man. But other than that, it's a completely separate thing that has nothing to do with Stephen King. Funnily enough, King actually sued the makers of this film because it doesn't use anything from his short story. And I think the courts awarded him about $2.5 million. Although what King expected this studio to do with his short story in the first place, I will never know. But ultimately, he got his money, so I'm sure he was happy in the end. So the new story that they've come up with for this movie is more of a sci-fi horror type thing, as you probably guessed from the thumbnail. So we've got a scientist played by Pierce Brosnan, of all people, and he's dabbling in the world of virtual reality headsets, which was probably a very new concept at the start of the 90s. I'm not sure what he's trying to achieve at the start of this film. He's putting these headsets on chimps, and I think he's trying to make them smarter, maybe, and he's just monitoring their reactions to being on the headsets, whatever. He wants to start using human guinea pigs, but he doesn't know who. So he settles on this guy he knows from across the street, played by Jeff Fahey. This character has a very low IQ. He's got learning disabilities, maybe. And so Brosnan thinks, yep, that's the guy for me. I'll use him. It's not very ethical at all, but honestly, that is the least of this film's worries, in all honesty. So he starts experimenting on this guy, Job, his name is. And to begin with, the headsets do make Job smarter, and he becomes as smart as a normal person. Then he keeps going and he becomes like a super intelligent person. And then he becomes like the most intelligent person in the world. And then he becomes like a megalomaniac who wants to take over the world by spreading his super smart personality into the internet or the phone wires or whatever they had in the 90s. You know, suddenly we're in a situation where there's an existential threat to mankind, all because of Pierce Brosnan's virtual reality headset. And it's like, this is a stretch for a storyline. It really is. And that's one of my biggest problems with this film. The tech that's used just does not make any sense whatsoever. Given that this is a horror channel, and so most people are probably here for the horror content, I think there's a good chance that if you're watching this, you will have seen Freddy's Dead, The Final Nightmare, the much maligned sixth film in the Freddy Krueger series, which has one of the worst depictions of video games you will ever see in your life. You could just tell when you watch that sequence that whoever wrote it had never played Nintendo or on a Mega Drive or a Master System. And it's kind of the same with the Lawnmower Man. I just feel like whoever wrote this film just did not have any clue about the tech that they were writing about. Now, maybe in the 90s you could have fooled audiences with this stuff. Maybe people who went to see this in the cinema were like, oh, well, I don't understand this stuff. We'll just take your word for it that you know what you're talking about. But watching this in 2025, it's like, oh my God, they had no clue what they were doing, because the idea that you could just take a virtual reality headset, plonk it on someone's head, and then the waves from the headset is just going to make them into the world's smartest person, and they're going to become like a big threat to the earth. It's so wild. It's absolutely stupid beyond belief. And they also use these spinny machines in this film. So I think these machines are actually real, and they use them at NASA. It's like, so what you'll do is, like, astronauts will strap themselves into like a sculpture of man position, and then this thing will spin them around like in all sorts of directions, and it's meant to like get you ready for when you're at zero gravity and then you start spinning around. It gets your brain used to what that's like to be constantly spinning around. So they've got those machine things in this movie, and a lot of the time the characters, when they're putting the headsets on, they'll put them on and then use this spinny thing to spin them around while they're using the headset, while they're using the virtual reality. And it's like, why do you need to be spun around while you're using the headsets? That's not how they work at all. God, I do not have a good relationship with this movie. The director of this is Brett Leonard. If I've got that name wrong, I'll correct it in the comments, but I think that's the dude's name. He went on to do Highlander the Source, which I'm guessing is one of the much later down the line Highlander films. Although, to be honest, when it comes to that franchise, it takes a very special kind of person just to make it past Highlander 2. In fact, by the time you get to Highlander the Source, It's probably down to one viewer at that point, just one random dude in his living room who gets hit by lightning, and he's like, there can be only one who makes it to the end of this franchise, and I am that guy. I've now seen all of them. But we should probably get back to talking about the Lawnmower Man, because if I try and talk about really bad Highlander sequels in the same video as the Lawnmower Man, I think I'm probably likely to have my first ever stroke. When it comes to bad movie making, we've got more than enough on our plate today with The Lawnmower Man. But I thought this would be a lot better just because of the calibre of actors in it. And this is not a low-budget film. This is a proper medium-budget 90s cinematic release with people like Pierce Brosnan and Jeff Fahey. You'd think you'd get something for your money. I was quite excited, actually, when I saw Brosnan pop up. I'm thinking, oh, this is James Bond in an early role, but then you see him with his earring and the fact that he's smoking in bed and he doesn't want to have sex with his wife, and very quickly you're kind of like, yeah, this doesn't really feel like James Bond, actually. It took me 3 sessions to get through this movie. So it's 110 minutes in total, just painful. So I watched 45 minutes on Tuesday, and then the next 35 minutes on the Wednesday, and then the final 30 minutes on the Thursday. So my sessions were gradually getting smaller and smaller throughout the week as I strained every sinew to somehow make it through to the end credits. And I finally did so. I should get myself a t-shirt that says, I survived the Lawnmower Man, and then in brackets at the bottom, in just 3 sessions. The first half of this is an absolute snorefest. So Brosnan takes Fahey's Job under his VR wing and makes him smarter every 5 minutes, I guess. Things pick up in the second half because at least we get a bunch of kills to watch. So at some point, Job becomes self-aware, for the want of a better phrase, and he goes off and starts killing people. In order to do this, he puts on this like all Velcro suit that just makes him look like one of the contestants from The Running Man. That's another weird thing about the use of VR in this. Whenever they put the headsets on, they feel the need to wear these Velcro suits. But why? Like, you tell me, if you've ever used one of those PlayStation, Sony headset things, do you wear like a Velcro suit while you're playing your games? No, I thought not. But the kills themselves are just silly. Like, Job goes into a church and basically turns a vicar into the Ready Brek Man. And in another scene, well, I guess he's transcended by this point into something not human, because Job suddenly appears in the sky as this giant orange head. And there's a couple of FBI agents in front of him. And Job uses his telepathic powers to alter the body matter of these FBI agents so that they just become a bunch of floating ball bearings. It's like, what on earth is going on here? I mentioned Nightmare on Elm Street earlier. I do feel like the kills in this movie could have been from a 90s Freddy movie. Let's say they'd done one. And I mean a proper Freddy movie, not New Nightmare. This could have been the logical next step after Freddy's dead, doing another one which was a little bit more sci-fi, but it was also even sillier than what you saw in the 6th film. And then we get to the finale of The Lawnmower Man, which basically involves Pierce Brosnan and Jeff Fahey having a shouty match, but inside a virtual reality space where they've both got their own badly drawn sprite, and they're talking in weird voices. Like, you've got Brosnan there, he's like, "It never meant to go so far, Job." And Job is like, "Too late, I'm going to take over the world." Except he's not, because Brosnan has planted explosives in the lab. The only time in this film where he does look a little bit like James Bond is when he's planting those explosives. And somehow he makes it out of the lab and he saves a kid on the way out. I think this kid might have been in the film before this point, but I can't remember. It might just have been a kid who wandered into a science lab at the worst possible time. I can't remember, and I don't care. There could have been a good drama film here if they'd have scaled back the sci-fi horror elements, albeit if they had done that, I probably wouldn't have watched it. But let's say they'd have just concentrated on the characters and had it so that Job becomes gradually smarter, but not ridiculously smart, like he actually becomes in this movie. Let's just say that they'd made him into somebody who could be a university student from having started off as this person with a very low IQ, and then later in the film had the character realise that actually being smart is not all it's cracked up to be, and it has its pitfalls as well. And then by the end, he just wants to go back to being who he used to be. You know, that the moral of the story could have been, you know, just accept who you are, your faults and the things that you are good at, etc., etc. It would have been a very mushy sort of storyline, but at least it would have felt like some kind of movie of worth instead of this VR train wreck that you've got in its place. The story I've just described, by the way, I do feel like I've seen that same kind of plot in other mushy drama films. I just can't think of any examples off the top of my head. But one of the big problems with this is that all the characters are just so unlikable. Job himself, as soon as he becomes really smart, he just becomes this really arrogant, insufferable person. So he gets a girlfriend at one point, and this could have been really nice to watch. He could have got with this girl, and you would have watched this play out, him going on dates and what have you, and thought to yourself, oh, isn't that sweet that he's now become somebody who's attractive to women, and now he can experience love and what it's like to have a relationship. But this girl he gets with, he just treats her like she's a piece of ass. Like, Job might become smart in this movie, but he doesn't become emotionally smart. Like, he just sees this girl as a sexual object, someone to experience sex with that he's never previously been able to have with anyone. And he ends up tormenting this girl as well, like scaring her inside the VR thing. And it's like, just stop treating this girl like crap. I don't actually know if this girl survives the movie. She just kind of disappears at one point because she's so traumatized by the way that Job is treating her. But yeah, Job's an arsehole, basically. And Pierce Brosnan's character is not much better. Like, deep down, the Brosnan scientist is a good guy, but he's very ethnically questionable in this. I don't like how he's using monkeys and the way he's using Job in these experiments. I don't feel like a scientist should be doing this kind of stuff. I mean, granted, in the real world, putting a VR headset on somebody would not cause these kinds of disasters, but still, Brosnan's character was somebody I did have issues with. And then you've got the stock characters who are in charge of the lab, the businessmen, the stockbrokers, the financiers, who are all portrayed as these like greedy businessmen who are only interested in the tech that Brosnan's come up with. They're only interested in the bottom line. They don't care about the human cost. How many times have you seen side villains like this? And it just feels very lazy. They just feel tacked on to the rest of the movie. So yeah, it's just a movie filled with poor characters, irritating characters, and there's not much left. Like, there's no redeeming features about this movie. The only thing you can get out of it is to laugh at the special effects and how bad effects used to be. I guess if you watch this with somebody else, you can just take the piss out of it all the way through, but that's the only worth of The Lawnmower Man. It is pretty much an awful movie experience. Right, it's time to get to the bag of terror and find out what sort of score I'm going to give The Lawnmower Man. There's not much in this bag. Oh, just one Michael Myers carving knife out of 5. And the only reason I'm giving it this is because, like I said, you can have a little bit of fun maybe taking the Michael out of it if you're watching it with other people. But for that aspect, I might have given this 0. So we'll leave it there for today. I'll be back soon to do some other reviews of other movies, although among those other movies will be a review of The Lawnmower Man 2, Beyond Cyberspace. You think I'm joking? I'm not joking.